Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7:10 this evening, and we start our meetings at 7:10, so I think we shall begin. I'd like to bring this meeting, regular meeting of the City Council to order for this Monday, April 20th, and I'm on. Is this any better? Okay, we'll try. Anyway, we'd like to call this meeting to order this evening. The mayor is quite ill this evening with a bad case of the flu. I think he'll be fine, but he sounded awful when I talked to him this afternoon. And Ben Davis is excused for this evening. With that, I'll call this meeting to order, and the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to call on our longtime planner, certain early retiree, Wendy Compton-Reading, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Wendy, thank you. Next, we have communications from the public scheduled. This is for any matter that is not a public hearing, anything on your agenda that is not otherwise a public hearing this evening. Mike.
Mike's on? Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a public, Michael Hine, 612 Lupfer. This is not a public comment on the growth policy discussion, but it is an offer. I don't think there's any of our other commission members here, but during your final deliberations, if you have questions about why a decision was made, you could ask the Planning Commission if it's not clear from staff. So it's just kind of an offer that if there's clarification needed, it's possible that me or one of the other commissioners, if they're on, could lend some light on why a decision was made or why a recommendation was made. Okay? Yep.
Hi, my name's Andy Bestwick, 28 Willowbrook Close. I'm here on behalf of the Willowbrook Homeowners Association. We've had some concerns about the Armory Improvement Project, first of which is the city's asked for an easement for a stormwater outfall structure in our public common area, the Parkland area. And a few concerns have been raised about that. The first one is additional flow from the stormwater could up the 100-year floodplain, which could increase flood insurance or require flood insurance for some of our homeowners. So if there's anything that you could say, or maybe it's more of an engineering question to ease the concerns of some homeowners, I think that the odds of getting this easement would be increased. The other concern is just the aesthetics of the outfall structure. We've had some people working with Morris and Merrily to discuss that, so I think that's moving in a positive direction. Our homeowners are also concerned about, it's my understanding that there's going to be a crosswalk from the east side of Armory Road onto our parkland. This is a raised concrete crosswalk with a yellow flashing light, to my understanding. And as part of the conditions of approval for the subdivision back in '94, one of the conditions was that we maintain the pathways for our common area. I think our concern is that this is basically becoming a public or a city main arterial for pedestrian traffic. So some of our homeowners feel that the city should be involved with the maintenance of these pathways. Additionally, we have a bridge that's failing, and we don't have the funds to replace it right now. It is some of the homeowners' opinion that this bridge is failing because of the High Point subdivision and the increased flows through Cow Creek. Basically, our abutments are failing. I think this is evident because the city's bridge is also failing and has been condemned. And it's also to my understanding, supposed to be removed as part of this armory project. So I'm not here today to bitch about stuff. I think it would be in all of our interest to get this project through, but it would go a long way as far as us voting on this easement, which is a big part of getting this project through, in my understanding. I think the homeowners would be a lot more likely to allow it if the city was willing to work with us on maintenance of these structures and pathways. So today I'm asking for a couple things, a couple different options to present to our homeowners. The first one would be that the city take over maintenance of the bridge and pathway. And then the second one would be, is the city willing, if we were to grant them the entire parkland, would they be willing to maintain it as far as mowing, plowing, taking care of the pathways, and spraying for weeds along the river in exchange for just granting them the entire park? So either of these things, if you could consider them, I'd appreciate it. And again, I think it'd go a long way towards getting this easement approved with our homeowners. Thanks.
Annie, thank you. And just so you know, we're not in a give and take kind of a routine at public comment, but what I will tell you is you've been heard.
Yeah.
Our staff has been heard. We'll follow up with them.
Perfect.
Thank
you.
Good evening. My name is Carla Steele, and I live at 168 Armory Road. I am here in addition to, one, say thank you for giving attention to the Armory Road and creating a project for us, because that is something that will add value to our homes and safety for our kids and all the pedestrians in the area who are trying to enjoy that particular artery of our town. I am in agreement with the HOA president for Willowbrook, Andy, in that there are concerns from our homeowners in terms of the pedestrian pathway and the bridge assistance with maintenance, as creating that raised tabletop that is supposed to slow traffic in addition to connecting the east side to the west side and bringing you through to 4th Street will increase if that is truly going to be a main artery coming from like Armory Park, etc. I'm in agreement that the stormwater easement, which the engineers from Morrison and Merrily have been really cooperative and working really hard to try to make something happen for us, that we would like to all reach an agreement there. What I am not in agreement with is including the entire parkland as an option for the city to maintain. I do not wish to offer that to the city. The only area that we would like assistance in terms of maintenance is where you are directing traffic, which is the pathway and the bridge. And that is it. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Name and address for the record.
I'm sorry, what?
Name and address for the record.
My name is Corinne Gaynor. I live at 172 Armory Road, and I am here with numerous other people from Armory. First of all, to just reiterate, we're so excited about the project. There's no pathways, there's no lights, there's no a lot of things that we could use on that road. Secondly, I'm also in agreement with Andy that we've been challenged by the easement of the drain water that is right next to my home, and I've written numerous letters to the council and to the city regarding the amount of water that's going to come down into Cow Creek behind our home. Our homes are, mine and my neighbors are built on a clay hillside. Since we've moved in, and we moved in 2007, that hillside is slid. We've just recently spent about $80,000 putting in a retaining wall. And I am very concerned that the creek bed and adding additional flow at that juncture could cause erosion and undermine that clay mound that our homes are on. And both of our homes My neighbor next to us has even a bigger retaining wall than the retaining wall we have there, and if it's undercut, that clay will continue and not probably the foundation, but the rest of the home will continue its slide into the creek. So we're trying to work with the engineering team, and they've been really great, but that is a huge concern ongoing for our property. The bridge, we'd love to see you guys come in and say, yeah, we'll pay for all of it, but, if you could help us out a little bit, and maybe we can get the homeowners to come in. We were just working on a bid we've known for 10 years it needs to be replaced. We've been talking about it that long, but we have no reserves. So there's no money for that bridge, and that bridge, you think your bridge is bad. I don't know if any of you have seen our bridge, but it's scary every time you walk across it. So if you could split it with us, just help us with the financing, whatever, that would be super, because we'd love to see all the kids come across to the new stadium and then go out to the skate park and bring their dogs and come through that community. That community is beautiful. The third thing is I'm also in agreement with Carla and not in agreement with Andy in that we as homeowners value that property and are going to work to increase our HOA fees so that we can maintain it in the manner that it should be maintained as part of our property and not burden the city with additional city parks. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jamie Belt. I'm at 170 Armory. You're seeing a theme here. We're the Armory people. I submitted a public comment, and I'm sure you had plenty of time to read it on top of your 700-page packet. But I will give you the salient points of it. Agree with our neighbors so far in saying thank you so much for designing this Armory project. We're very excited to have a sidewalk and a way for our kids to get to town safely, to get to the dog park and all of those other places. So we think this is going to be a net positive. We've been super grateful for all the work that the city's been willing to do with us to help us get engaged in the projects, especially as people who are going to be directly affected. We are the neighbors of the Gainers, and so we are going to have our property gets bisected by the stormwater drainage that is going to be put in to drain all of Armory. And the engineers have been super helpful in helping us to design that. So I think we're on the right track with that, and everything is headed in the right direction. I know there's still concerns about erosion, and we still have just concerns about the safety of the feature that's being proposed and the design specifics of it. So I think we're on the right track, but just for the record, want to say that we would like to get that all resolved before the design is signed off on and before the easement is signed, so that we can make sure that things proceed as they've been planned. So that's kind of the thing about stormwater. I have a really simple question, or at least request, and maybe this is something that gets followed up in the construction meeting that I think is happening tomorrow. I know you guys are really good about your night sky lighting, and so hopefully this project will be just like the rest of them. But I'm just curious if you guys know, when you have street lighting like that, how long does it stay on? Is it on all through the night, or does it turn off a couple hours after sunset? Does anybody know?
It's my frustration. I think they're on until sunrise.
And so can a neighborhood make a request that they get turned off a couple hours after sunset so that we have our natural darkness? I mean, we have a pretty good wildlife corridor through there with Cow Creek, and it would be really nice to retain that, especially because we're not on the main corridor, so there's not a whole lot of reason for people to need to travel on Armory past 10 p.m., for example.
We hear you. Somebody up here might make that request.
Okay.
Okay? That's the best I could do for you.
Okay. We can work with you too. I mean, I do a lot of work with natural darkness with the Park Service and have a lot of resources if it would be helpful to share them. I would also like to share the opinions about the bridges. We appreciate and understand that this is a great way for people to get into town, and those bridges cut off a lot of the distance versus going around Second. So this project will definitely increase the flow of traffic by facilitating more people to come through the Willowbrook HOA neighborhood. And so we would love the city's support with those bridges, both in terms of construction and maintenance. It seems really fair with the increased traffic flow that is going to be resulting from this project, that it's a shared responsibility. I also disagree that there's any reason, and I don't even think there's a legality to granting the HOA land to the city, but we would just like to state for the record that that's not what we would like to see as owners of this land who purchased the land, knowing that the HOA common area was ours to hold in common. And I think that's it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Casey Morton, and I'm at 160 Armory Road. So we are right on the walking path, and agree with our fellow neighbors of Armory that assistance from the city for maintaining the path and the bridges would be appreciated, but not in favor of giving any land from that common HOA area over as a part of the project. And I like your idea about the dark aspect, because that is one of the, like, really nice parts about being so close to town, but still having that darkness, like looking out your front door and seeing the northern lights, like that would not be a case anymore. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name's Eric Sawtell, 170 Armory Road. I am in complete agreement with my neighbors and my partner Jamie with all things she said. It's an exciting project. We really appreciate the city's work on it. Our conversations with Craig and the engineers at Morrison and Morelli have been super helpful in working through the issues that we had with the stormwater outflow structure. We're still working on it, and I agree with what my partner Jamie said. We would like to see the final design before we actually vote on that easement. Yeah, basically echoing what everybody said, there's going to be a lot more water moving through our property with this project, and we do have erosion concerns with Cow Creek, and I think they're pretty valid. And, you know, I don't know somewhere down the line if there's some kind of need for increased stabilization of the stream bank, if we can work together on that, because there may be issues with that. And also with the increased traffic, again, it's a really net positive for our community to have sidewalks and also to have kids and all people to be able to move through our commons area. We're totally in support of that. But would absolutely like help with the bridge and the paths with this project. I think that that's a pretty valid question and concern. And I'm with my neighbors also not in favor of handing over the entire parkland, just really needing help with the mobility aspect of it. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Any additional public comment this evening?
Z, not on Armory Road, but power to the people of Armory Road. Happy 420, everybody. Maybe a proclamation next year. All right, so I have for 180 2nd Street, for your record. I have a brief response to, one absent counselor, but to some counselor comments responding to my comments. So, council, our country has goose-stepped to the far right, and the adage made famous by Tip O'Neill, all politics is local, is no longer true. Cultists rule the county commission, and until November 2025, dominated the Kalispell City Council. When I moved to Whitefish in the early 2000s, Montana was a purple state. My Republican friends and I often disagreed over policy, and I appreciated and respected the diverse opinions. 10 years ago, the political landscape was forever changed. The racists, the anti-LGBTQ, and anti-choice Republicans were emboldened and assisted by extremist right-wing media talk show hosts such as Montana Talk's Arian Flint, supported and promoted local candidates, including Whitefish City Council member Giuseppe Caltabiano. Unlike Dr. Jesus Trump, I do not believe there are good people on both sides, as I have lost too many beautiful students to suicide as a result of the hateful policies condoned by Giuseppe and his ilk. While some of you might choose to join hands and sing Kumbaya, I will continue to be the voice for the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you, G. Anybody else this evening? Okay, Richard.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, Councilors, Richard Hillner, 104 Fifth Street, Whitefish. I need some advice here. I got busy on the packet late. And is the ordinance on e-bikes going to be in public comment now or later? And the discussion of the 9340 Whitefish Marine Housing Project, when are those coming up?
I think those are public hearings.
Those are both public hearings?
Yeah.
93 and 40 is not a public hearing, so your comment for that would be now.
Yeah.
On which one?
On the developers agreement for Highway 93 and 40
Okay.
is now.
Comments. Whitefish Marine Housing Project, 18 acres, 300 residential apartments, and 38, and I don't know what a KSF is, but maybe it's 1,000 square feet, I don't know.
I think, Richard, we've confused some things.
No, this item is actually on the consent agenda.
The item that he's talking about.
Is on
Yes.
the consent agenda.
Okay.
This
yes.
is on the consent agenda, and just for your consideration, if you want to either pull it from the consent agenda or make some kinds of changes. But, and I realize I'm a little late to the dance on this one, but what you end up with in this project is when you add it to the Alpine 9340, you end up with 7,574 daily trips for that Highway 9340 intersection. The current level of service is a C. It's unclear to me as to what time of day that queuing analysis for travel at that intersection was done, and clearly there was no data for 2025. And the traffic impacts are pretty clear in the engineering report or the traffic report that the level of service will drop to D under current configuration, but that the state is going to eventually change that configuration. Yet, if they go ahead, if you give them permission to begin this project without that improvement already in place, my fear is that given the speed with which the state changes its travel and construction projects, who says no to the builders and the developers when they've gone ahead and gotten started, and there's a provision in there that says they will have to stop until at some point, that point is not clear in the project, if the highway improvements are not made. And so who's going to decide that? And how do you, it just seems so nebulous. It's pretty hard to tell a developer, oh, stop construction, even though you have all of your equipment, all of your supplies and building materials, and you have to stop and wait for 3 years for the state to finish building the highway or rebuilding that part of the highway. And I think that there was, there was no discussion on the impacts of that development and that volume of traffic on emergency egress. And I'll be back to talk about e-bikes.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? Michelle, anyone online?
Kate McMahon, if you would like to unmute your mic and state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Kate McMahon, and I live at 151 Wedgewood Lane. I submitted comments today on the land use plan. My concern were the changes that were made after the public hearing was closed. There was, I think some of the concern was from the council was the potential of a suit that the land use plan would be unconstitutional. I'm sorry, I'm getting some echo here on my end. I submitted in my comments that the Montana Supreme Court has already determined that a non-regulatory document such as a growth policy or a land use plan is incapable of being unconstitutional. So I would like to ask the council to restore the language that is there, so it can be considered later when you're doing the zoning ordinance and you have more specifics about the provisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
I think we're good.
Oh, good. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any communications from volunteer boards in the audience?
Hello, Grant Hughes, 210 Granite Drive, the Whitefish appointee on the Flathead County Board of Health. Just coming to give you guys a little review of what's been happening over the last 2 years. We have 8 different major divisions that we oversee. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of a few of those and not all of them because time. Start with the animal control. Recently they had turf installed, which makes cleanup and the enjoyment of the animals much greater. The board requested and the commissioners approved additional staff at animal control. I think they added 1.5 FTE in the last 2 years, so they're a little better staffed. Last year there was a big case out of Quorum where they impounded 27 dogs and then the dogs were not released, so they had to be held as evidence for about 4 months. So that overwhelmed staff a little bit. A lot of the other county employees started volunteering, including Janelle Grau, who eventually transitioned into the director shortly after that as well, when Austin Hicks retired. So there's also been a change of the veterinary staff there, and they're kind of adapting with that. There's a lot of dogs and a lot of cats and some puppies and some that are still needing weaned. So if anybody is looking for an animal, go down there. They have lots. One of, I think, the most exciting things that's happened in the last year is our behavioral health mobile response team that was brought underneath the county. It's a crisis intervention team that was integrated into the health department and overseen by Supervisor James Pike. They average 57 hours a month of patient interventions. These are people calling in, feeling suicidal or with drug problems, and they are going and helping them out. Average of 133 client interactions per month over the past 12 months. The majority are suicide interventions. And so these are people that maybe have called 911 and then they're getting social help instead of police help. There's an average of 19 ER diversions and 4 jail diversions per month. So those are people that are keeping out of the ER and keeping out of jail and really helping. It's unmeasurable, their impact on law enforcement, but the ability for them to show up at the scene, see that it's safe, see that someone's there to help, and then go back to providing the services of our sheriffs and police departments has been huge for them. Some of the divisions I'm not going to talk about: communicable disease, population health, family planning, and community health. They all do great things. I'll save that for a future meeting, perhaps. Environmental health. I was going to present last fall and never found the time, or last summer, but there was, I think, 6 to 8 Whitefish restaurants that had C or lower scores for their restaurant reviews. This year, everybody's doing great. So we just had our meeting last week. All the Whitefish restaurants had A's or A pluses. So we have definitely improved that. Airbnbs in the hotel have all been passing and inspecting. And then septic regulations. I did not anticipate how dominant septic systems would be when I volunteered on this board. At some point prior to joining the board, there was a lawsuit, something with the DEQ, where the county had been approving variances for groundwater clearance and allowing septic systems to be installed when there was less than 48 inches of groundwater clearance. And the general opinion became that the county should not do that anymore. So if there was not 48 inches of clearance to high groundwater, the septic system could not be approved. So this impacted existing septic systems. They could be changed to the same, but they could be improved, but they could not go up in size. So for example, one of the first ones we saw was a house on the lake here where it was a little 1-bedroom cabin and they wanted to put in a 4-bedroom house, but their septic system was decrepit, but it was a 1-bedroom. And because of groundwater failing, they couldn't do anything but put it in a replacement 1-bedroom. Somebody came up with the idea of utilizing what's called an EcoJohn incinerator system, which is a whole home incinerator system. So instead of just an incinerator toilet, it's burning everything. There's an option to have part of it go to one tank and be pumped, part of it not, but it all goes to a separate building that has an incinerator that runs typically on propane, because these are being designed for properties out in the county, and everything gets burned off. So our first house that we saw on that was a property on Ashley Lake that was probably improperly subdivided, too small. Her drain field was on the neighbor's property without an easement, and then he built a garage on top of it, condemning their property after they bought it. And a lot of it was just bad due diligence on the homeowner's part, but a 30-year-old with a baby on hand, doesn't really think about that kind of stuff. So they didn't have an option on this property. So we approved the first incinerator for their property. We've had a few others that got approved. I think there's somewhere around 6 to 8 that are currently been approved. I'm not sure how many have actually been installed in the county. I expressed concern at our first meetings about not wanting this to allow construction on any wetland. Does not open up every possible piece of property to build on. Idaho allows them. They require low water fixtures or low volume fixtures and no washing machines. So I suggested that if we add that, at that point, we should consider that as well. Concurrently, DEQ Circular 4, which is the state septic regulations for homes, essentially, where new regulations were published in December 2023, and suddenly there was a big diversion between the county regulations and state regulations. And so a subcommittee that I was not on was formed on the Board of Health to basically work with the environmental health to rewrite our septic regulations and construction standards. Those went through about 12 months of regular meetings and rewrites and changes to try to align everything with that DEQ Circular 4. There was a few public comment periods, and I think it was our second public comment period. There was suddenly a big interest in the fact that gravity-fed systems were now back on the table. In 2004, the County Health Department changed the regulations and required pressure dosed for all septic systems. So instead of just allowing gravity, it had to be electric powered and pressure dosed. The state does not require that, and since we were aligning with the state, we removed that requirement. I think probably 3/4 of us on the board, this was somewhat of a surprise. We didn't even think that anyone cared that much less the amount of outcry that we had. We had 70 pages, which is small compared to your hundreds, but of public comments. And in that meeting, I think 3 of the 8 board members voted no to pass it on because we wanted to discuss and look at the possibility of adding gravity-fed systems further. So I went home and reviewed DEQ Circular 4 and said, what does it actually say? Does it allow gravity-fed septic systems to be used everywhere? And are they inferior to pressure dose systems? DEQ Circular 4 allows it in certain cases. System types, and if it's a sand line absorption trench, elevated sand mound, subsurface drip system, or absorption bed, it's required to be pressure dosed. If the system size is more than 500 linear feet or 1,000 square feet, it's required to be pressure dosed. So essentially that's gonna mean most 3-bedroom homes and smaller might be able to use a gravity-fed system. Soil quality, it's systems installed in gravel or texture soils with percolation rates faster than 3 MPIs must be pressure dosed. So if it's a gravelly soil, it's not gonna be allowed. If it's 3 to 6 MPIs percolation rate, it's required to have an additional 2 feet of separation to a limiting layer, so you have to have 6 feet of ground instead of only 4 feet. So the state regulates based on the soil, not based on the type. So the county regulations were saying you had to be pressure dosed all the time. The state says if you have this, basically 2 or 3 of the conditions met in your soil quality, we will allow a gravity-fed system. And if the size of the system is not too large or of this certain type. I also reviewed all of the scientific literature, went on scholar.google.com and searched for any peer-reviewed articles published in the last 20 years regarding pressure dose versus gravity fed. And the majority of them were equivalent, and any that were not equivalent were not, it was not within, the gravity fed system was still performing well within regulations. Rod Kunz, who is the Kalispell appointee on the County Board of Health, submitted a public comment last week for our meeting where he used AI to review the scientific literature and give a summary of it, as well as 6 actual scientific references. But there was a great summary at the end of it that said there's no peer-reviewed scientific evidence establishing that gravity-fed septic systems inherently produce greater groundwater contamination than pressure-dose systems. Comparative studies show mixed or statistically insignificant differences, and the weight of evidence demonstrates that soil characteristics, vertical separation, and loading rates, not distribution method, are the primary determinants of groundwater impact. Following that, the entire board, with the exception of Don Barnhart, who's the Columbia Falls appointee, voted to approve the regulations. They were sent to the county commissioner, who approved them as well. Yeah, so.
Can I interrupt you with a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know why you're here, which is this issue. My question is, you may be right, or the literature may be right. My understanding is that there is no requirement for a certified engineer's report regarding the soils if you're going to put in a gravity fed versus a pressure. Am I missing something, or is there a requirement if that you want to use gravity fed, you're going to have to show up with a certified engineer's report that demonstrates that the soils will support it?
I believe so. So you have to report the perk rate. And so your perk rate has to be, either greater than 3 and less than, it's 200 and something, but basically you have to have that clay soil, or not clay soil, the sandy loam, I believe, is
Right.
essentially where it's at.
But does it require a certified engineer's, hydrologist, whatever report to assure that that's the case, as opposed to builder shows up and says, oh yeah, I tested it and looked at it and it looks fine to me?
I'm not sure.
Okay. If I'm talking for myself now, without the council's approval at this point, one of the concerns I would have would be that your research, and the research may be absolutely right in terms of the size and wonder where. I think the concern that I would have is that if that's true, I just want to make damn sure that there is an engineer or hydrologist or qualified professional that puts their professional license on the line saying, no, I've tested it, it's fine, we can use this.
Yeah.
And that's what I think would cause a lot of people to get a little more relaxed with this idea of dropping the requirement for pressure fed.
Yeah.
That's what I've picked up from what I've seen and heard. So anything you can do to help us bring that up or ensure that that's part of the regulations consistent with state regulations, that would be a great thing.
And I think that, and, you know, the construction quality.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people saw gravity-fed systems installed in the 70s that were done by, you know, my cousin's brother. And maybe we're not, you know, it requires more finesse with your excavator.
Right.
It requires not driving over your drain field with the excavator after you lay all the dirt
Right.
down, you know?
Right, right.
And I hope that, and I think that our construction quality has improved over time.
Yeah.
But that's another thing I would like to see some, you know, post-installation site inspections for looking at things like that.
Sure, go right ahead.
Didn't you just say that the county commissioners already accepted this change?
They have.
Okay, so you can't retroactively ask for an engineer's analysis unless you amend what you've done? Or is
Yeah,
that?
that's correct.
So you could
But
amend?
we can amend things.
Yeah,
I
I hope
mean-
so, okay.
There's a process, it's,
Well, we do have septic systems in our town that, you know, in around the lake and stuff. So it is a concern because we don't want the groundwater to be contaminated. But I really appreciate all your research on this so that you've come before us and assured us that we're not at risk,
you know, I think,
pretty much.
thank you. And I think that, you know, groundwater is a big concern, and protecting it is very important. I don't think preventing new installation or, you know, additional regulations beyond what the state requires are necessarily the most important parts to protect our groundwater. You know, it's identifying those failed systems is more important. You know, I've made the comment a couple times in our meetings about, you know, there are AI methods to use drones to fly over neighborhoods, and there was a PhD project developed out at the University of North Carolina at Raleigh, where he was using imagery to identify failed systems, and he had like 90% accuracy. And I mean, that algorithm's out there. He published his paper. We could develop it if there was a nonprofit interested in doing so. The county doesn't have the money to do so or the time, I don't think, but, and you know, things like requiring septic inspections before title transfers would go a long way to identifying failed systems. And currently there's nothing like that, so.
That legislation was voted down by
Yeah.
our legislature several times.
Yeah.
We can ask again, but thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Steve?
Yeah, you know, I'm admittedly a novice on this whole thing. First of all, though, I can imagine several drones getting shot out of the sky if you undertake a project like that in the county. But the question I have is, what, you know, I'd like to get some information back on this so that if we need to take further action to guarantee that, one, the enforcement is in place, not only for new systems, but when people have to come in and upgrade or update their systems. And then and I'd also like to know if what the state requires in terms of, because I just don't know, what they require in terms of inspections before, what kind of testing they require. Does it require any sort of certified engineering certificate that says this is the actual perk rate versus somebody going in and saying, yeah, it looks like you got about that much. You know, I think we need to have that data before we decide that this is something we need to get up in arms about as well. I mean, from the optics of it, it doesn't look great because it feels like we're going backwards. We have engineered systems that are better in general than gravity fed, and the state, for whatever it decided, or it never decided that we should have pressure systems And we had something in place that said, yeah, these pressure systems need to happen because of water quality. The optics of it look like we're going backwards. I hope you can appreciate that. No matter what the science says, but you know, the science, it seems like the science is kind of split on the issue, or the science is kind of saying, you know, it really doesn't matter based on a certain number of factors, but we need to have a report for every single system that shows that, yes, these are actually the factors, just like we have a traffic report whenever we do a development. So that's the kind of information I would like to get back, and I don't know if you can spearhead that and bring it back to us, or just compile it and send it to us so that we can decide whether this is something we should be more up in arms about. Because honestly, you know, whatever the rule is, it all comes down to enforcement. And unfortunately, our colleagues at the county, at least in the planning side of things, do not do a very good job with their enforcement of the rules that they have in place. So that's my biggest concern.
Yeah. And I will look into that, because I have that question too. I assume that, you know, the site inspection goes out and the county staff tests it, or it requires a PE to sign off, but I don't know that that's something I would assume from, that would be what I would think would be required, but.
Any other questions for you? Or Grant, excuse me.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch. Grant, and Grant, you're welcome back here anytime you've got an issue you want us to know about. Please do come. Thank you. Any other volunteer boards in the audience? Not seeing any volunteer board reports from the council. Rebecca.
Yep. Arbor Day is this Friday at 9 a.m. That would be April 24th at the Armory Park Kiddie Playground. So everybody is welcome. We do that once a year where we plant trees in one of our many parks. And then also the Climate Action Committee is meeting the third Monday of the month at 3:30 to 5, and they met recently. We're going through a long list of projects to see which have been completed and what haven't been. And we hope by mid-summer we'll know whether or not we met our goals of, Craig, I'm sorry, but is it 26% reduction in greenhouse gases? Is that, or I wasn't sure, 26% reduction by 2025 is what the goal was?
Yeah, that's the number.
Okay, and then there's some equation that we're working on, Tammy's working on, to see if we actually met that goal. And so that will be exciting. And then they're also moving forward with a parking study and EV charging. Craig has decided to put EV chargers for Depot Park in his budget this year, correct? And you want to comment on that?
We've talked about it. So EV chargers have been in the budget for the last couple of years, but it's required some grant funding, which we haven't been successful in getting. So I think as we move forward with the budget, we'll continue to talk about EV charging.
Okay, so I'm
Is that
speaking
fair,
too
Dana?
soon. And
Okay.
then the last thing is we have on the list is to hire a sustainability coordinator, but we have a brand new engineer, and so we're going to have an in-house position for 1 or 2 years to see if we can use existing talents instead of hiring out. So that's it for climate action for now.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any other board reports? Not seeing any. We'll move on to our consent agenda, and with that, I would entertain a motion, and that would include if anybody wants to pull anything from the consent agenda for further discussion.
I'd like to pull item C off the consent agenda, please.
And is there a motion to approve, subject to that poll, the remainder of the items?
Motion to approve without C.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussions? With that, all those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Absent item C, the consent agenda has been approved. Now, what is our discussion point on?
Would you like to take this up now or at the end of our public hearings?
What's the pleasure of council? Now?
Now?
Now.
Okay.
Anybody, okay, let's go.
Well, I have a question to start. I kind of concerned that this large of a project kind of slid through on the consent agenda as an annex.
Steve, can I just speak to that? This is the notice of intent to annex. So the actual public hearing on this is scheduled for June 1st. If you're reading the resolution. So this is required to initially advertise that we're going to have a public hearing on this. And so it'll be a much more thorough discussion on this. On June 1st, this is just the preliminary notice of intent, which goes on the consent agenda.
So this will go to a full public hearing for this,
On
whether
June
this
1st.
annexation actually happens or
Yep,
not.
and whether you guys choose to annex or not, and accept the developer agreement as proposed.
Okay. Thank you. My apologies for my misunderstanding about that.
That said, any further discussion on that item at this time?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would make a motion
Please.
that we adopt what will be our resolution number 26-06, which is a resolution of intent to annex.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, just a comment. We love Steve so much that we seconded and voted to listen to you, so smile.
Thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign, and the matter passes unanimously. Now on to our public hearings, the first of which is not a public hearing. The public hearing is closed on this matter, and we're turning it back. We carried this matter over in the hopes that the mayor might be available for the passage of it, but given his illness and Ben's, I've talked with both. We're going to move on this matter tonight. I have a couple of items that I'd like to bring up for discussion on the growth policy based on my review of the final one and the mayor's review of the final one that we can at least discuss. The first, and if...
Mr. Deputy Mayor, could we get a motion first, and then
Sure.
that won't drag us on forever and
please.
infinitum?
Please.
I would make a motion that we adopt resolution number 26-07. It's a resolution to adopt the 2045 Vision Whitefish Community Plan.
Motion made and second, and for purposes of discussion at this point, I guess, I would like to raise maybe a couple of amendments or friendly amendments to the growth policy as it's currently written. I would like us to look at, for everybody's purposes, the issue relates to our references to duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, and the fact that those things are normally set up as individual ownerships of the entire sets of units. In other words, the duplexes is owned by one person, the triplexes and the fourplex. What I think the purpose of allowing these kinds of increases is to encourage separate ownership at a much less cost than buying an entire duplex or triplex and then renting out and so what I would like or ask, or if there's any moment, that we also add a reference to that these items, these multi-units on one lot, be set up or allowed to be under separate ownership, whether that be through condoization or separating the one lot into 4 individual property owners for the fourplex that's on or allowed on that lot. And my thought is that what we really want in the whole purpose of allowing this kind of concentration is to allow more opportunities for individuals' ownership of these smaller units. And we can't require it, but I think it would be important for us to state, consistent with all the public hearing that we had, and all the public interest in allowing for more ownership opportunities within our, within the city, that I'd like to add a reference to that we should also encourage on those multi-unit properties, and encourage separate ownership of each of those units, either through the use of separate meters, separate lots, or condo maps, or a separate property or party walls, if they want to call them it, to allow for and to encourage individual ownership of different units, and that they could be sold individually as opposed to having to be sold as a whole.
Okay.
Sure.
So, like, for instance, what Alan put up here is Objective A, a broad mix of housing types should be allowed and encouraged. And then you want to add like a line that says, home ownership is desirable. Or, Dave, isn't that already available? Like, can't people already develop that way? Do we need to
Yeah.
add anything to it? Because I thought it was already a
Condos are
possibility.
exempt from our subdivision regulations, so anybody has to just, hire an attorney and put together an HOA for the condo, and they can file that and sell the individual lots on any duplex or triplex. It's a little more cumbersome than a townhouse, which we allow those, but you have to have a lot that's big enough to be able to do a townhome on it. So they're regulated by the size of or area of the lot. But all those are already allowed in all of our zoning districts currently. So.
Go ahead.
So do you think we need to add language to clarify that home ownership is desirable?
I mean,
or-
if the intent of the council is to encourage home ownership, I mean, you guys could add that in there, but I mean, again, it's something that's already available depending on the zoning district and the size of your lot.
So should we add the intent of this, or do you want to change anything, Frank?
I do, and as I explained to Alan when I was having this discussion with myself earlier, I'm a lawyer. I understand perfectly well that duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes can be, in fact, under separate ownership on each of the units. That's not exactly what the community knows, understands, or appreciates. And one of the reasons that we've gone to allowing these kinds of increased densities is that we want the opportunity for more individual ownership of these theoretically less expensive units. And so that's my motivation here. Can it happen otherwise? Yeah, I think it can. But do I think it's, again, consistent with what we are about doing here, which is creating more ownership opportunities within our community under less expensive or more reasonable costs? This would be this is the way that we all think, well, yeah, if we got a duplex, yeah, people should be able to split the cost of the whole thing, and you get two for the price of one, kind of a routine. So all I'm suggesting is that we can't require it, but I would, my entreaty is that if we put it in here in this objective, I think it'll give us an opportunity, or at least a basis upon which to say, yeah, we heard you. Yes, we encourage this. And maybe a developer or somebody else that's looking at this thing says, oh, this might be a better way to act. So that's my only theory on it.
Frank, if you were to make a motion, how would the wording be?
I'm open to suggestion. What I would add is we encourage in duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, quads, individual multifamily. Okay, that's fine. We encourage separate meters for each unit, separate lot or a condo map, and separate party walls to allow for and encourage individual ownership of each unit within those multi-units or the complex.
Who is we?
Could you repeat that one more time, Mr. Sweeney?
Just a sec. Giuseppe?
Yeah, since we're wordsmithing, who is we?
Good point. Yeah.
We don't use the first person in this.
Encourage. Yeah, there you go.
Honestly, I think it's redundant. Personally, I think we just, there is no bite in my mind to that sentence. How does the city encourage, unless that reflects in our planning sessions? So when we do Title 11, we have to apply tools that incentivize and make it so that whoever develops is encouraged to do that. And I think the objectives are already pretty clear. I never doubted that a triplex could be 3 units owned by 3 different entities. I do not know why we need to further make verbosity in that objective. I don't care either ways. I'll support it if it makes you feel better. But
I guess go ahead, Steve.
I think the point here is that this is a vision document, and our vision is to encourage ownership, and we don't have a statement that encourages individual ownership of these types of units anywhere else. And I think I agree that this is, it's not regulatory, it's vision oriented, right? This is our policy. We want to encourage these things to happen. We used the word encourage in the sentence before as well. So encouraging developers to do things in a vision document is what we can do. Regulating them and requiring them to do it is not something we can do, and we won't do that when we get to we wouldn't be able to do that if we don't have a statement like this, if we decided to try to go in the regulatory route later on.
Just because it's a vision document, to talk about meters and party walls, it looks like we're going so down into the weeds. I mean, maybe in 20 years, meters are done remotely with no physical meter for all we know.
I agree with you there. I think we can change it to city encourages individual ownership of these needed housing units, if that makes any sense. And then that leaves it open to however it has to happen that way.
Of whatever size.
I would say of these needed housing units, because we reference it in the first sentence. Duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, cottage courts, all those things.
I can live with that.
We could even add the word much in there if we wanted to. Much needed.
Yeah. So if a mother and a daughter buy 2 units under the name of the mother, are we going to have some ordinance that discourages that because it's one owner? I mean,
No.
how do you discriminate that?
We're not going to regulate this, but it's part of our vision.
Giuseppe, let me put it this way. What my intent here is that people should be encouraged when they develop these multi-unit projects, that they should develop them in such a way that they would be individually transferable to separate ownership. They're not required to. And nobody's saying you have to. But I think what happens a lot of times in these multi-units is you end up with 1 meter. You end up with consolidated interests or no ability to subdivide or share interests with the underlying property. And we can't require that now. All I'm saying is that if we're listening to the people that we are trying to serve, the encouragement is for us to provide, or at least encourage, ownership opportunities at a less expensive price than buying the entire triplex or the entire quad. And so that's all I'm doing. I can't require it, I get that. And so all I'm trying to do is raise the issue. So, yes, Dana?
I would like you to wordsmith this a little more, because if I read that sentence, it says the city encourages individual ownership of these units. It sounds like one person should own all of the units, which I think is completely against it. So it depends on how you read it. So I would say the city encourages home ownership opportunities for these much needed units. Keep it very broad and just say home ownership, because that could be a unit, it could be a townhome, it could be a full single family home, but just how it was written was just a little off for me.
Right. Yeah,
I think an important piece is missing after you just said that, and the idea is that what we want to encourage is developers, when these new developments come online, that they are set up for the ease of transfer of ownership to individuals, and I think that part is missing. So I have some potentially different language that could be the new letter B here.
New letter B?
Yes.
Or, okay.
So, new development, or it could be A1, new development of this type should be encouraged to, new development of this type should be encouraged to ease the transfer of ownership to individuals, to separate individuals, or something along those lines. Again, I'm spitballing here as I'm going along.
Okay, keep going. I like you're saying.
That's what I've got.
I think it actually could be part of A. In other words,
Steve, can I just add a suggestion? Maybe just this B itself would be, the city encourages the development of long-term home ownership units, and new projects should be, and then whatever your sentence was, so it's just the whole B would be about home ownership units being the thing that should be prioritized, individual ownership units. So
and the idea is
home ownership units should be prioritized, right? And home ownership units should be prioritized, and development should be designed to be, I don't know how you worded that, but to be able to be quickly transferred, or be able to divide it, into multiple units. That was the intent, Steve?
Yes. The intent is making it easier to transfer the ownership to individuals that live there. I don't know how to wordsmith that. This is what Ben doesn't want to do on the dais, and I agree with him in that respect, because we can't come up with the right language in 5 minutes. That's going to last for 40 years, or 20 years. But I understand the intent, and if there were a quick and easy way to do it, I would love to figure that out, but I don't know how to I can't make the word salad right now myself.
all right. I'll give it a shot one more time. With that in mind, Steve, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Let me see, multi-unit projects. Let's add, this is the objective A. The city encourages multi-unit projects to be structured in such a way as to promote the individual ownership of the separate units in the near term or long term. Because somebody may want to build one and own all 3 units and rent out 2, okay, fine. But at some point, they may want to transfer one of them or sell one of them. Or they may want to sell all 3 units, and there are 3 people that want to buy separate interests. So so I'm not restricting it. All I'm saying is that at some point, if we're going to allow these multi-units within our community, and we're trying to encourage the opportunity for individual ownership, this at least ought to be referenced here. So that's my goal. So that's my first friendly amendment. What should we? I would move that we make that change as a friendly amendment to approving the growth policy.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. Now, hopefully my, pardon?
Did you vote for or against? Okay.
All right.
Your hand was late.
Giuseppe did vote for it, correct? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Now, I'd like to look at a couple of the.
Frank, can I ask, who,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, we were dealing with online people. Can you remind me who seconded? Okay, thank you.
Steve did. I made the motion, Steve seconded. Now, we have a couple of place types in our land use. What we intend is, and we've called them mixed use, and we've called them neighborhood centers, and we've called, and there's whole chunks. I'm talking about locations, particularly locations B and C on our land use map. What I understand, and again, I've listened to all of the community, and John and I have talked about this. If what we want is, again, suburban ownership opportunity type neighborhoods, and we want an opportunity for a walkable area, we don't necessarily want to mix random retail deep within and off of various of our main thoroughfares. I'm thinking 93 in particular for both locations B and C. B is set up so that one section of the whole thing, which is called mixed use, only one part of it is actually zoned for commercial in the B2. My suggestion is that what we say, in effect, is to change on page 427. I got a simple fix for this. Let me see if I can get back.
427 of the packet?
Of the packet. We have second paragraph. Overall, participants have expressed a preference for subcompact suburban type, place type for location A, a mixed neighborhood place type for location B, and a slightly more intensive neighborhood center for location C. It is recommended, we say here, it is recommended that any mixed use or commercial uses proposed within a mixed use neighborhood place, such as locations, and I would add
Can you
B.
hold on? I can't even find the page yet.
Sure.
So I can't even follow along.
Sure.
427?
Yeah, Alan, yes?
Yep, page 189 of the plan.
But it's.
Sorry, it was somewhat 189, 190 of the plan. 427 of the packet.
Okay. What paragraph are you on, Frank?
I think he's on the second paragraph.
Overall participants? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if you go down to the end of the third line, we say, the sentence starts, it is recommended that any mixed use or commercial uses proposed within a mixed use neighborhood place type, such as, and I'll say, such as location B or C, locations B or C. So location would go to a plural. It would say locations such as B and C, be located along Highway 93 or fronted towards 93 for future Baker Avenue to ensure improved market. And so what I'm doing is, to the extent we want to talk about mixed use on certain parcels, what we're doing is we're focusing that where we know it is not already allowed. It will be consistent with walkability for the neighborhoods that will be hopefully formed behind them, and allow, for lack of a better description, allow for them to have some level of success. But what I really don't want is, I don't think any of us want, based on our last discussion, that we want a random restaurant or coffee shop or anything else located up in a neighborhood where what we really want is home ownership, and we want homes. Sure.
So what you're talking about is called the neighborhood, no, is it neighborhood corridor? What's the place type? Is it the corridor?
There are 2 or 3 place types that are affected by this.
Oh, I'm asking staff, not you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, because this came up last time, I thought, with Thomas, but, so what we would be doing is we'd be getting rid of the mixed neighborhood place type, and then we would be replacing it with a corridor place type in the front and something else in the back.
For this particular question, I think all Frank is suggesting is to clarify in the mixed neighborhood that the commercial be oriented along 93 in Baker. That's it. We're fine with that. It just, I think we probably should have said B or C. Right now it just says B. Or sorry, right now it just says C, and I think it should have said B or C.
But I thought the neighborhood center place type included commercial within it. And then the corridor type, place type was only allowing retail or commercial along the main arterials.
If it's okay, I know that CZB is on the line because they wrote a lot of this and were highly involved in this. I may defer it to them to make sure that it's represented correctly.
So I agree with Frank that that would be my preference. Long range is to have more residential away from the arterials and commercial along the arterials. But I thought the mixed neighborhood was the opposite of that.
Again, can I defer to Thomas?
Alan, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Thomas.
Okay. So the mixed neighborhood place type is a place type that is primarily mixed residential types, housing types, but also does allow for small neighborhood commercial within it. So it can be integrated within. A neighborhood center place type is also a mixed place type, but has almost a bit of a larger neighborhood center or village center associated with it. So it does also have a mixed use component. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so if we wanted to change this to not having retail or commercial within the residential areas and only along the avenues or the corridors, how would we fix that?
Well, then I think that maybe if your intent is to really maintain the commercial development along 93, in this case, for locations B and C, I think the recommended language does do that. I think it essentially keeps it much more similar to what you have right now on the corridor. I think this gets there if that is your intent.
That, to the extent it hasn't been made, that is my additional motion.
I'll second.
Any, Giuseppe?
Just to understand your motion better, when location B talks about being located along US 93,
correct.
Location B is like a flag shape where the 93 adjacent side it's very, very tiny. I thought the spirit was to go either 93 and or Baker.
It does say Baker. Still says Baker. Yeah, 93,
Or
US 93 or
say it
future
back.
Baker Avenue.
Now, yeah, I thought you restricted only to, okay, take my comment back.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any further discussion on that potential amendment? Further thoughts? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. That amendment passes unanimously. Now, and I'm going to ask Alan and maybe CCB, the last thing, and it's consistent with that amendment that we've made, and particularly in place in location B and location C, which for our purposes are the area across from Don K by the Baptist Church, and location C is essentially the old hospital site. I'm not sure how to best do this, but what we've essentially done or recommended through that initial amendment was that we're, to the extent we want to call each of these sites mixed use in some form or fashion, we have different place types within those. And so what I'm now going to ask, and whether the best way for us to deal with this is, rather than say, for example, the remainder of location B, which is the going west from 93, that's not already commercial, and the area that is east of let's deal with location B first. What I would suggest or recommend, again, consistent with what we've heard and what we want, is that why are we using a mixed neighborhood place type for the remainder of B? Shouldn't it really be compact suburban neighborhood? Again.
So Frank, at the Planning Commission, that was changed, that area B, half of it was changed to a compact suburban and the other half to that mixed residential neighborhood. So that was already divided up at the Planning Commission with the place type map on area B.
Right. So
that was in response to some of the concerns
so
from the Park Knoll neighborhood, and that map was changed.
Right. So what I see is that part of it is compact suburban, which is on the furthest west portion. But the center part of this thing, or what's just off the, what I'll call the community corridor piece, is mixed neighborhood. What does that mean? We're not allowing, we don't want commercial there. It's already going to be
Mixed neighborhood is a mix of residential types, single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex. Thomas can speak to it, and then it mentions potentially some neighborhood commercial uses, but only adjacent to Highway 93 or Baker Avenue.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's already outlined in the, if you read what that place type says.
Then I withdraw my comment. That was my concern. I just didn't, I want us to focus on what what we want there, consistent with having a fixed walkable neighborhood. Now I'm going to ask the same question with respect to location C. Do we have to, or should we identify what I'll call the frontage along 93 on the old hospital site, going back 100 feet, maybe 150 feet? Do we change that to community corridor, or do we need to do that? And then I'll ask with respect to the remainder of that property. Do we want it to remain community corridor, or does it need to change, or should it stay community or neighborhood center, whatever that is? Because what I'm thinking, I'll finish my thought, and this will be my motion, is that I think that the remainder of the old hospital site should not be mixed neighborhood, shouldn't be neighborhood center, and it shouldn't be, and it should all be effectively compact suburban. Now, is this something that I need to change now for us to make happen? Or is this something we can handle through the zoning when we get to these sections?
I mean, you know, the zoning is what it is, so we're going to have to change the zoning in the future, right?
Right.
It looks like, and I'm trying to look at the colors on the place type map, but the majority of that is neighborhood center with some mixed
Yeah.
neighborhood in there, right?
Right. Well,
Which a mixed neighborhood is, with that qualifier you just added that says that any mixed or any kind of commercial uses should be concentrated towards Highway 93, I mean, that gives the direction that, because mixed neighborhood is mostly the mixed residential types.
Okay.
Single family,
So-
duplex.
right.
And then
So-
the neighborhood center is what is, falls under, I think most of that is where it's already zoned WB2, which is,
Yep.
Highway commercial.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, I think it's already accomplished with that little change that you made earlier.
Okay. So I guess my question, then my random question is, maybe I live with the idea of mixed neighborhood, but why would the center piece of the old hospital site be called a neighborhood center? Shouldn't it really be mixed neighborhood?
Well, I think that was, Thomas can answer that. That was the, he should probably be the one to talk about it, but that was the concept that, all of our visioning sessions had, with that area would be the hub of, walkable,
Yeah.
types of uses that people live in around there could utilize. But Thomas, go ahead and discuss that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm happy to jump in and give a quick explanation, a little bit of background. So as we were working with the community and getting public input on that particular site, there was a real desire to make sure that that site had a bit of a kind of a center feel to it, a little bit more density, a little bit more of an opportunity for housing types, et cetera. And so the neighborhood center place type was created for that. I think that with the language that was added earlier, I think it probably protects you from some of your concerns with regard to commercial development. I think that it's also important to recognize that different place types, I should say, and individual place type may have one or two or three different zoning designations under it. So I think you're probably protected with it as is. The idea was to create a somewhat geographically defined center where things could be integrated a little bit more than they would otherwise be if it were just corridor commercial or more suburban. That was the idea behind the neighborhood center.
And Frank, it also includes the mall site, Super One Foods, all of that is part of this.
Yeah. Given that explanation, I think we'll just have to deal with it through the zoning process. I think is probably a better way to do it than try to do more brain damage here. With that, I have no further thoughts or for further discussion. If there's no others, discussion-wise, we're back to the original motion, which is to approve the growth policy as now amended and presented. Any further discussion?
I do have a comment about, and I will reserve this maybe for second reading to take it up more in detail, but because I understand that we need to move this forward, and I think tonight is the night to do that. I do still have a concern about what we changed, what we removed last week with regard to the 60-foot building heights in our downtown core area. And I may be pulling this off of the consent agenda at on our second reading, just to let you guys know. But I support.
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution, so it doesn't get a second reading. Is that what happens?
When it's done, it's done.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, how much brain damage do we want to go through? I'll just make the motion. And on page, I think it's on page 196 of the document itself, 434. Last time we removed reference to the 60-foot building height. I forget exactly what the language was in there, but I'm sure it exists in a document somewhere. And I would move that we restore numbers 1 and 3 to that section. And it would read, so right now, currently on page 196 of the document, right now it reads pursuant to the new state legislation, SB 243, zoning regulations, municipalities meeting the requirements of subsection 76-2-304. The city may not include a requirement to provide height restriction of less than 60 feet on buildings that are located in downtown commercial, heavy commercial, or other industrial zones. And that's all that's left. That was number 2 or B, I forget which one it was. But we removed those 1 and 3, or A and C, and my motion is to restore those. If I could get a second, but.
I'll second.
Okay.
Rebecca?
Well, I voted not to remove them originally, so I'm in favor of keeping them myself. I agree with Kate McMahon's comments that this is a growth policy, and it's not regulatory, it's visionary, and I think we should keep it intact instead of removing things without further discussion.
And just in support of my own motion, my comments from last meeting stand. I think that by allowing 60-foot buildings in our downtown, we are opening the door to a lot of change that we don't want to see in this community. Our downtown is the beating heart of what Whitefish is and what it has historically been. And if we have 60-foot buildings downtown, which is going to be mostly new construction, that's going to take away a lot of our old historic facades. It changes the character of our town completely, and I think that that we don't, if we're going to die on a hill, I think that's a hill I think we should die on in this document. It is not regulatory. This is a vision statement, and without having that language, it may prevent us from doing something in our zoning that protects us as well. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Any further discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. I like it.
Oh, I got one passed. Holy cow.
Any further questions, discussions, or matters that we need to cover on the growth policy? Yes, Rebecca.
There was one typo, but I already gave it to Alan. I don't need to
I fixed
add
it.
that in here, do I,
We got it.
Dana? Or, no? Okay.
If it's a simple typo, I think that.
One
I would hope
typo
I
out
wouldn't
of
have to
the
get a
whole-
vote on a typo. I fixed it.
Thank you. Okay. That's pretty darn good.
All right, all those in favor? All those? No, for the motion to approve the growth policy. Matter passes unanimously, and on we go. All right. Thank you all. The mayor thanks you. Everybody is very happy. It's really over. All right. We'll move on to our item 20, I guess it's going to be resolution, what?
Felt like there'd be more fanfare on that one.
Yeah.
At least I got a hug.
Oh, wait, yeah. Move on to 2608, resolution adopting the Vision Whitefish Public Engagement Plan. Are we good?
Do you need a motion? I so move. We read it.
We've got a public hearing here.
Hang on one second. I'm just getting the presentation geared up. Okay. Wow, I'm speechless. Okay, this is a amended public engagement plan. So in June of 2024, the Whitefish City Council adopted a public engagement plan. And the public engagement plan indicates how the city is going to provide continuous public participation when adopting Vision Whitefish 2045. When this plan was being prepared in early spring of 2023, the Montana Land Use Planning Act had not yet been adopted. It was still in the drafting stages, although we did know that a public engagement plan would be required. When MLUPA was subsequently adopted, the public engagement plan was required, but it was also required for regulatory updates, which we did not know at that time. The present engagement plan that you approved only deals with a growth policy. We have since updated the public engagement plan to include any future updates to the community plan, to the regulatory updates, and any administrative processes that are directed by MLUPA. So the area, there's a lot of red marks in there, and I apologize about that, but I'm just going to kind of briefly talk about the areas of very limited changes. So there's some stuff, the format looks pretty much the same. There's just, I'll tell you what the significant changes were. The red marks are extensive, but the general layout and format is basically the same. There's no significant changes to the role of the decision makers. There's no significant changes to the participants or the audience. There's very few changes to the opportunities for public participation, and there's very few changes to the tools for outreach. So that was major parts. But what there were big changes were the significant changes. Again, the document now focuses on community plan updates, regulatory updates, and site-specific developments versus just the growth policy. There's a new section that was added called Water Land Development Regulations. There's a new section added called What is a Site-Specific Development. There is a table now at the bottom. The original public engagement plan had a whole table with all the steps of what will be required with the growth policy and all the different opportunities for public engagement. Now the community plan is done, so there's a table now that's more general. And this table just kind of talks about the three different processes, community plan updates, regulatory updates, site-specific developments, and what the engagement opportunities are. The big change is really the role of staff, and that is because that's what MLUPA told us that we have to do. So this is a key point. This is important. When a local this is what MLUPA tells us. A local government shall provide continuous public participation when adopting, amending, or updating a land use plan or regulation. So we have that in this public engagement plan, how that will work. Then the final adopted community plan, including any amendments or updates, comprises the basis for implementing the land use. So it says once you're done with this, then your site development, your regulations have to match that community plan. Then it says after the regulations are completed, the scope of an opportunity for public participation and comment on site-specific developments is reduced. That the public participation on site-specific development plans in substantial compliance, it's only to impacts that were not previously identified or significantly increased impacts. And again, this is what MLUPA tells us. So the planning administrator is to make a determination, and the way this works is that the planning, when we get a site-specific development, right? So somebody comes in and do any kind of project. The planning administrator is to make a determination first on whether the site-specific development meets the plans and the regulations, and whether there would be any new or increased impacts not previously considered during creation of the plans or regulations. That's the first thing we're required to do. That's what this public engagement plan says. If the planning administrator determines that there are increased impacts, then they can request additional review, and there will be a 15-day public comment period. MLUPA says that, and this is important to mention, MLUPA says if a proposed development is in substantial compliance with the zoning regulations in the map and all the impacts have been analyzed, there's not new impacts, that it must be approved, denied, or approved with conditions, and it is not subject to any further public review or comment. Again, this is what MLUPA tells us. And then there's an appeals process that is listed. So there's what we're calling the MAID exception. And that's kind of, when you got your packet last week, there's one little tweak that I had to make because it's confusing at best, and it is confusing. What it said was when the MAID lawsuit was filed, in the interim time that it was being deliberated, they added something. And what they added was that they said that prior to July 1st, 2027, that the planning administrator's initial determination, so when they get a site development plan and they look at it and they say it meets the planning, it meets the community plan, and it meets the zoning regs, and I don't see any impacts, that initial determination is subject to public notification by the public. So they have to do a 15-day public notification process. That process is required for a year, and then that process is to go away. And again, I know it's confusing. So there's a little footnote in this public engagement plan. So to summarize, basically, here's the way the process works, because I know this is confusing, and I apologize, I didn't write it. Community plan has gone through robust community engagement. That's what you just did, and you adopted this plan. Now the city is working on the regulations. Those are the next things you're going to see. You're going to see a kind of what we're calling a Band-Aid fix to get our regulations in conformance as closely as we can. And basically that conformance, what we're talking about with the Band-Aid fix, is going to be moving things from public to administrative review. Again, not our decision. That's the next thing that you're going to see. Then when a site-specific development comes in, the planning administrator or their designee is to look at it and say, does it meet the comprehensive plan? Does it meet the regulations? Yes. And then are there any impacts that were not considered at the time that the regulations and the comp plan were written, and are they any new ones? Then until next year, they're supposed to send out a notification saying, I made that determination, right? Then they review it, and if there are no new or significant impacts, they are to make a decision, and that's it. And then there's an appeals process. Is there anything you want to add, Dave, to that? I know I understand the concern. That is what we're being told to do. So that is what the public engagement plan says. With that, I'll take any comments or questions.
Any questions for Alan on a staff report? Steve?
Alan, I see things better in images than in words. Is there any possible way you could put together some sort of flow chart that kind of shows how this process plays out? Because I know a lot of people would like to see some sort of flow chart on that.
If you're saying right now, no.
Yeah, no, I understand you can't do it.
Sure, I can put a flow chart as a graphic into the public engagement plan.
Thank you, appreciate that.
It would be relatively simple and probably aggravatingly simple.
Rebecca?
So I must have missed this. When did this July 1st, 2027 thing happen? Because I thought, I mean, that means we go to by right from that point forward then, right?
Yeah. So during the last legislative session, they passed a bill to amend MLUPA to address the happenings with the Maid lawsuit. And so that's where the requirement for the 15-day notice came in. Before that, there was no 15-day notice period. So they actually, at the legislature, had it sunset effectively July 1st of 2027, because they knew they'd be back in session before then if they needed to keep it going or not. So, but because of the decision, they're going to let it sunset, is my guess.
Andy, any questions? No. I do. So if I'm understanding this correctly, for the next year, until 2027, there'll be, anytime you make a land use decision, there'll be a notice period and people can comment.
It's prior to the land use decision, so it's a preliminary decision saying, okay, it seems to meet all the qualifications, but we'll still send a notice out and people have an opportunity to comment.
Okay.
Yep.
But and they have 15 days to do that from the time you send out the notification.
Yep.
After next year.
Yeah, that goes away, and we'll only notice people there's clear increased, either new or increased impacts that weren't considered previously. And at that point, we would notify the public and have an opportunity to comment, and also notify the applicant that we need more information. They either need to do an additional study of some sort
Right.
or whatever, and
Well-
then that's evaluated.
Right.
And, all those processes, once the decision's made, are appealable to the Plan Commission, and that decision is appealable to the City Council.
Correct. Now, under the theory that we can't be more restrictive necessarily, but we can be more open than state regulations, could we, as a city, just simply say, our notice, we're going to continue to operate with preliminary and then 15 days and then carry on?
That's a legal question. I think it's kind of clarified we're not supposed to do that. Although I can read you the language. I mean, I have that, this is what it says here. So it says, I don't know if it says it's not subject to notification, but it says it's not subject to further public review or comment.
I think you'd be in a very gray area, probably leaning toward violating MLUPA. The intent of MLUPA has always been to eliminate that public comment period and review process because we've done all the work up front. And so with that 15 days, the fact that it's explicit now and then they get rid of it, I would say you would be violating MLUPA if you were to continue to allow for public comment and notice.
Okay. I understand everything you just said. I respect everything you just said. I may support this, but it's not going off my to-do list. Just so you know.
Maybe another hill. I mean, I'm not sure.
we've got another legislative session coming up. Maybe we can get that fixed. Who knows? Okay, thank you. I believe we called for a public hearing on this matter. Any public comment on this time on this matter? Not seeing any online.
Those of you who are attending virtually, if you would like to speak towards this matter, please raise your hand. I think we're good.
All right, great. Close the public hearing, and I'll look to the council for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 26-9, a resolution adopting the Vision Whitefish 2045 Public Engagement Plan.
It'll be 2608.
Yep. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. On to what will be our resolution 2609, a resolution rezoning 509 East 6th Street and 806 Spokane Avenue. There you go.
Right here, over here.
Wendy, we're so glad to see you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the next two public hearings are just housekeeping matters. They are PUDs that have expired that we need to remove the PUD and just bring them back to the regular zoning. So the very first one is over there on East 6th Street. Back in 2022, June, you approved ordinance 2210 for a PUD for a mixed-use building. Per condition number 15, that expired in August of 2025, and so that is why we are requesting a rezone. So again, the property is located at 6th and Spokane Avenue. It is currently developed with professional offices. It is surrounded by commercial and the Whitefish River, has all the public services and facilities. We noticed the neighbors and put it online, and we didn't receive any comments. We review zone changes according to the criteria in the zoning chapter. It complies with the growth policy, and most of the items are really directly related to development, which there is no development proposal at this time. The Planning Board or Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 19th, and no one from the public spoke, and they unanimously recommended approval. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Yep.
I think Was it Dana's report, or was it your report that said that the trail is going to be allowed to be opened?
That's my manager's report, but I have met with the owners of the new property, and the PUD did call out the trail as part of the public benefit, but the new owners are willing to sign a month-to-month lease for us to continue keeping that trail open. They aren't sure of their plans for the property, so they weren't willing to commit to anything further at this time.
Thank you.
All right, we published this for a public hearing this evening. I'll open the public hearing now. Not seeing any here, any online, Michelle?
Those of you who are online, if you'd like to speak towards this, please raise your hand. We're good.
Great, I'll close the public hearing at this time and look to the council for a motion.
I would move that we approve resolution number 26-09.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just a quick
Sure.
editorial comment, I guess. This is something that has always rubbed me the wrong way in this community, and Wendy knows exactly what I'm talking about probably, but something goes through the process, we burn a lot of staff time, we burn a lot of public time and everything else, and the day the ink dries on the approval, a for sale sign goes up on it, and it's something that just done simply to flip a piece of property and make money, and we go through a lot of staff time, public time, heartache time, and everything else, get promised the moon, and we end up here 3 years later. So just a quick editorial note.
I hear you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. Wendy?
So the next housekeeping item is the Edgewood 90 project, which was located kind of on the other side of the train tracks from the dog park. Back in September 2022, you folks approved an ordinance for a PUD for a 15-lot subdivision. It had 5 industrial lots, 1 lot with 30 multiplex units, and then some single-family, more rural kind of designations. But in October, it expired. So the purpose is to eliminate the PUD part, but retain the WR2, the WCR, and the WA. The property is located at 1291 East Edgewood, plus some unaddressed lots to the east. It's about 92 acres. It's surrounded by rural types of land uses. Water and sewer were never extended to this project. They were going to bore under the BNSF railway, so that never occurred. We did notice the neighbors. We did not get any comments, and similar to the other one, we reviewed it according to the criteria and the zoning regulations. The Planning Commission held a public hearing. No one spoke, and they recommended approval.
Great. Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Not seeing any. I'll open the public hearing now. Anyone wants to speak on this particular matter? Michelle, anyone online?
Those of you online, if you'd like to speak towards this, please raise your hand. We're good.
Great. I'll close the public hearing at this time and look to council for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 26-10.
Motion made by Councilor Norton and seconded by Councilor Cornell. Any further discussion?
Just a point of order. I
Yeah.
think that's Wendy's official mic drop. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Craig. I was going to get to that at the end, but I like your style. Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Well, I do have one thing. Thank you, Wendy. You have just been a joy to work with all these many, many years. Thank you.
All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. Now we're on to our ordinance 26. No, 04. You're right, 2604. Ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 5, and Title 7 of Chapter 2 of the Whitefish City Code. First reading.
Good evening. So in 2017, we passed the Whitefish tree ordinance, and that outlined the regulations regarding the care of public trees. However, recently, staff has found that in circumstances involving private trees that are encroaching in the public right-of-way, the code is somewhat cumbersome, and it does not account for all the circumstances that we have encountered. So as trees and shrubs grow along public rights-of-way, the overgrowth often encroaches on the sidewalks, alleys, and roadways, and it's our responsibility to keep the public ways clear for vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians. However, the current code does not allow staff to clear those encroachments. Instead, it outlines a pretty arduous process for clearing obstructions from the right-of-way. So to streamline the process, increase efficiencies and response times, and provide better service to the public, we have identified revisions to 2 sections of the city code. Under Title 7, Chapter 5, Section 4, titled Authority of Director of Parks and Recreation and Appeal to the Board of Park Commissioners, staff recommends removing Section G, as it references private trees in a section that is dedicated to public trees. It only references sidewalks and bike lanes, leaving alleyways and other rights-of-way unmentioned. It identifies inaccurate height requirements for limbs and branches, and it outlines a lengthy process that places the burden and the cost to clear the right-of-way on the property owner and not on the city. Under Title 7, Chapter 2, Section 1, Encroachments, staff recommends adding tree, limb, or shrub to the list of items that may not encroach on city properties in Sections 1A and C1. In Section C3, staff recommends adding private trees interfering with public right-of-way. The limbs or branches of a tree or shrub may not extend over any public sidewalk at a height of less than 10 feet or 14 feet over a bike lane, street, alley, or other public rights-of-way. The city reserves the right to remove any tree, limb, or shrub encroaching on the public right-of-way. The reason for this addition is that there are several reasons. It places private trees and shrubs in the list of other potential private encroachments on public rights-of-way. It identifies streets and alleys, as well as sidewalks and bike lanes, as public rights-of-way that are to remain free from encroachment. It identifies accurate height requirements for the limbs and branches, and it outlines a streamlined process that allows the city to clear the rights-of-way. There are no financial requirements associated with the approval of these revisions, and I do respectfully recommend that the City Council approve the revisions to the City Code, and I can answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Maria on her staff report? Not seeing any. We published this for a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing now. Anybody wish to speak on this matter? Anybody online?
Those of you attending online, if you'd like to speak towards this, please raise your hand. We're good.
Good. I'll close the public hearing at this time and turn the matter over to council for a motion.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would make a motion that we approve ordinance number 26-04, I believe, if I was keeping track there, on a first reading.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. And we'll move on to our proposed ordinance 2605, an ordinance amending Title 6 of the Motor Vehicle and Traffic and Title 7 of the Streets and Public Ways of the City of Whitefish Code. Bridger.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and City Council. Before you tonight is an ordinance amending Title 6 City Code Vehicles and Traffic General Provisions. As technological advances are made and the interest in alternative transportation increases, the city must regularly evaluate the city code to make sure that it stays current with the needs, interests, and actions of the public. To adequately provide guidance to the public on which types of transportations are permitted on various transportation systems, staff reviewed existing sections of city code related to the use of motorized and non-motorized vehicles and equipment on paths and public ways, and offered suggested revisions to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee during their February 2025 meeting. In coordination with the committee, staff updated Title 6 of Whitefish City Code to reflect Montana Code, current trends, necessary regulations for public safety, On August 18th of last year, City Council held a work session to review and discuss said ordinance. As provided in the red line version, I believe it's on page 653 of your packet of the ordinance, staff recommended the following revisions. Title 6, the title, Section 1, the short title, Section 2, definitions, Section 5, speed limits, Section 8, vehicle equipment, Section 10, driving in bicycle lanes, Section 11, traveling on shared use paths, Section 12, traveling on public sidewalks, and Section 13, I believe there's an error on the staff report, it should be 13, operating a golf cart. As for a minimal financial requirement, we're approximately $2,400 for purchase and installation of signage. And staff respectfully recommend that the City Council adopt the revisions of Title VI of City Code, and I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Bridger on his staff report? Rebecca?
Richard, do you mind just telling the public what the speed limits are of the e-bikes? Is it, I think it's, is it 20 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour? Just since we're covering it, and this is a new rule for the city.
So there's different speed requirements for each category of e-bike, but the speed limit for our shared youth paths, if I can find it, and Maria might know it off the top of her head, 15 miles per hour.
So 15 miles an hour for shared use paths, no matter what you're on? Is that correct? Okay. Just wanted it to be publicly stated so that if people don't read our minutes.
And that's e-bikes and that's regular bicycles as well.
Okay, thank you. Nice to see this get done. I'm sure Toby will be happy with us too.
Any questions, further questions for Bridger? We publish this for a public hearing at this time. I'll open the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Richard Hildner, 104 5th Street, Whitefish. With regards to e-bikes, I think that there are a couple of things that need to be clarified, and that is that this definition of e-bikes and then the enforcement of those rules and regulations could be and could become a little problematic. I live right on the bike path, and I see all manner of motorized vehicles using the bike path at speeds. Maybe I should ask to borrow the speed gun again, Bridger, as they come whizzing by, and it's clear to me that as they're coming up the hill, many people are not pedaling. They're riding a motorcycle. And I'm worried about that because when they round the corner and head between my house and the Mountain View Manor, they pick up speed through that twisty, narrow little piece, and I'm afraid somebody's going to get hurt at some point. The second is when we you first brought this up, Bridger brought it to the council on September 18th of last year, and I made many comments then, some of which were incorporated and some of which were not. But then later I brought up this question of these self-balancing mini bikes. And these are these short little mini bikes that are electric, and you can pop a wheelie at 30 miles an hour and go for quite some distance. And it seems to me that they have no place on our bike ped facilities. And finally, one of the questions of enforcement, and I have no idea how our police department's going to deal with it. If I am restricted or say, oh yeah, it's a type 1 or a class 1 e-bike, and it's really a class 3 motorbike flying down the bike path, all I have to do is go to Amazon or eBay and buy a sticker for my bike that says it's a class 1 or a type 1 or type 2 or whatever type I want to stick on it. And so when I get pulled over, I say, oh yeah, see my sticker. It's like people who abuse handicap or parking situations. Then finally, the question, as I said, I got a little bit late to the party here, the dance, and I think there was one other thing that I wanted to talk about with regards to that, but I'll leave it at that. Oh, I know what it was. The ordinance now says only on either side of Central Avenue between Railway and 3rd, riding on sidewalks, city sidewalks, is prohibited. And I would suggest you might want to extend that from the bridge over Highway 93 south of town, all the way as you come around on Spokane, come around and include all of what is now Spokane to Veterans Memorial Bridge on both sides of that sidewalk.
Thanks,
thoughts.
Richard. Any additional public comment? Are there any online?
Those of you who are online, if you'd like to speak towards this item, please raise your hand. We're good?
I got, if I may, I have a question for Bridger. On this ordinance, I understand what we're saying or we're trying to do here. The one that sticks out to me is that we've limited what we want to do in downtown with bikes, just can't ride bikes on the sidewalks. Okay, I agree with that. And I'm a little concerned about riding bikes on paths, sidewalks, that are not sized to shared use paths. Do we differentiate in here where they can, other than Central Avenue, where you can ride a bike on a narrow sidewalk?
We do not.
Okay. Do we think we need to?
When we looked at prohibiting bicycles and any riding of any type, it's skateboards, it's one wheels, it's all of that, we looked at the area where we get the most concentrated foot traffic, and that's that downtown corridor, and shrunk it to that. I believe we can always extend that area as the city grows and the need grows. I really looked at the downtown area to complement our shared youth pass coming into the park, and then also our kids accessing the school. That's why we don't have anything along Spokane. I don't think it's safe to push those kids riding bicycle to and from school onto the roadway, especially at that younger age. So that's why it's written the way it is. We have a couple of stores, bike shops downtown that I wanted to, I thought about in doing that, and those are in areas where the sidewalks are quite a bit wider. There still is a reasonable and prudent. You have to give audible notice of taking over a pedestrian. You have to give right of way to a pedestrian. All of that is in code. So those type of things I felt would take care of that, and we were just looking at that congested area where we receive the most complaints about near misses and people coming in and out of storefronts. And to speak to the electric bicycles and electric motorcycles, if it does not have pedals, the motorcycles, We actually had a jury trial reference this on a juvenile that was on, and we won that jury trial. So those are considered motorcycles. They are a motor vehicle. They can't be ridden on shared use paths. They can't be on sidewalks. And if you're going to ride them on public streets, you have to have a driver's license and they have to be equipped. Our officers, our SROs, when we started seeing this last year, immediately contacted those that rode them to school. We stopped individuals riding them on sidewalks and streets. We contacted their parents. We worked with their parents. They came and picked them up. We wrote warnings, we wrote citations, and we went to a trial on one of them. And I believe we've really stamped down. Are we still going to see it? Yes. There's always going to be some that are going to push the limits and continue to ride them, and we'll continue to enforce that. The other thing we looked at with just the area downtown is the ability to enforce it. The ability to enforce bicycles on sidewalks throughout the city, it's not feasible. That'd be very difficult to do. A lot of signage, it would cost a lot of money because the state is pretty specific that you have to sign that adequately. And there's a lot of sidewalks to patrol and deal with. And where do we want these smaller kids to do that? How do we differentiate from age, type of bike, those type of things? So that's where we're at.
Great, thank you. Any further questions for Bridger?
Will there be, now that we're going to pass this tonight, is there going to be outreach to the schools at all so that, that the kids are informed of these changes?
Yes, most definitely, and there'll be signage going up, and I believe we have a pretty good period of time before this goes into law.
Great. I would certainly entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve ordinance number 26-05.
Motion made and seconded.
I just have a couple comments.
Sure.
As somebody who rides their bike more than the average person, I will say that there are limited places where if you are exercising what Bridger said, prudent judgment, that you would encounter where you would have to, where you wouldn't want to be on the sidewalk, and that's really just Central Avenue. And I think that it's important to understand that because there are places where you, as a bicyclist, you don't want to be on the road, and Memorial Bridge is one of those scary-ass places where you don't want to be on the road, pardon my French. But you don't want to be on the road, you want to be crossing the road there and not riding with traffic very often on the bridge or in and out of town. Those sidewalks are plenty wide. At least for now, as Bridger said, is if you know, development increases and somehow those sidewalks become more congested, then it might be, you know, something to pay attention to. But for now, I think we're good with that. The other thing that I think that I would hope that this country comes to at some point is just the understanding that anything with a motor is a motorcycle. I don't care if it's pedal assist or if it has pedals and you only have to pedal if you want to and you just use the throttle. That is still a motorcycle, and they have no business on our sidewalks, and you should be licensed to ride one, and you should be a certain age to ride one, and they just don't belong on sidewalks if they can go over 15 miles an hour with some little kid on a throttle rather than somebody pedaling it under their own power. Because you can get up that fast on the sidewalks and the shared use paths around here. I've done it before. Hopefully I don't get a citation in arrears, but you know, you just have to be careful. And the problem is that people are not careful on those things, especially in a tourist town. And I just think they have absolutely no business on our sidewalks at all, no matter whether they're pedal assist, pedal, throttle. And I'm glad that you fought the fight, the good fight on those motorcycles, because those things are extremely dangerous for kids and for people driving and for pedestrians as well. So that's my 2 cents on it. I would love for us to take a stand and say, hey, no motors on our sidewalks, no matter what, unless you have, you know, if you have a handicap sticker in your car, yeah, maybe we'll let you do that. But it's gonna be a much smaller kind of thing than something that can go 28 miles an hour. It's ridiculous.
Thanks, Steve. Any further comments? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. We are now on to communications from our Parks and Recreation Director. Consideration of to award a construction contract for Armory Park parking lot and the open space project.
Good evening again. As you know, the Parks and Recreation Department has been working on projects within Phase 4 of the Armory Park Master Plan. And in FY27, we plan to complete the parking lot and the open space projects. Invitations to bid were advertised in the Daily Interlake on March 15th and 22nd, and the bids were opened on March 31st at 11 a.m. in the council conference room. We received 6 bids, and all bids were accepted. The bids ranged from 43% lower to 69% higher than the engineer's estimate for the base bid. Though there was one bid irregularity, it was a typo and it was easily updated and did not change the outcome of the bid. The apparent low bidder was Veda Contracting LLC, and the bid tabulations are included in your packet for your review. Financially, the FY27 budget will identify $550,000 in resort tax funds and an additional $750,000 in LWCF funding. So there is certainly adequate funding for the completion of this project. And based on that, I do respectfully recommend awarding the Armory Park parking lot and open space project bid to Veda Contracting LLC for a total contract amount of $302,719.78.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions for Maria on her staff report? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to award the construction contract for the Armory Park parking lot and open space project to Veda Contracting LLC for the amount of $302,719.78.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question for Maria. Why, it's a bigger spread than we normally see in bids, like really big, so.
Well, I think you're taking.
Do we know why that was?
You're taking Knife River into that consideration, and they were significantly higher than even LHC. But Veda is a smaller contracting company. They also got the bid for the last phase, and so they're currently staged in the park. So there may be some efficiencies that they may have been seeing. But it was, 6 bids just made it pretty competitive, and I think some people, some contractors were throwing some numbers at it, but there were some that were being a little bit more specific about what they thought they could accomplish.
Don't get me wrong, I'm very glad actually that we came in that far under the engineer's estimate, so that's great.
Yeah. That's kind of, do we want to look that gift horse in the mouth or not? I don't know. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. And now we're on to communications from our city manager. Her written report is in our packet. Any further questions for Dana? Dana, anything further?
No, I just want to say thanks to Wendy for all of her hard work at the city for the last 20 years. She's done more than 20 years. She's an amazing employee. We're all going to miss her, but we're excited for her to finally get to enjoy what she deserves, a great retirement. So with that, that is all I have this evening.
Great, thank you. I think it's now we're on to another resolution, amending the annexation and development agreement between POTS and PP Trust, Alpine 9340 Investors, LLC, and the City of Whitefish.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and City Council. Angie is out, so I am presenting her staff report for you this evening. It's on page 717 of your packet. Just a little bit of history. This property is one that the City Council approved a developer's agreement with as part of an annexation agreement. Since that time, they have broken ground down at 40 and 93 and have constructed the southern 3 buildings of the plans. When the developers agreement was created, there was intent to actually start with the 3 northern buildings, but they found that those buildings would be better to start with. With phase 1 now under construction, part of the developers agreement says that under phase 1, they have to complete the path and the bus stop and the improvements on Highway 40. Because of construction of phase 2 being the now northern portion of the property, having to do those prior to phase 2 is not efficient, and actually will probably cause damage. And quite honestly, the path will not be usable because of the construction fencing that will be required for those southern or northern 3 buildings. So they have requested a change to an amendment to the development agreement, and that is also within your packet. One thing did move to phase 1 was the workout facility that was originally planned for phase 2. They've moved that to phase 1. And then the installation of the shared use path along Highway 93 South and Highway 40, the completion of the approach improvements on Highway 40, and the installation of the snow bus stop have all moved to phase 2 so that they can actually use the site to construct the other 3 buildings. Staff is supportive of this and recommends approval of the resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Dana? Steve?
I do have a quick question, is why did they start with the other end and leave us kind of in the lurch on these other things?
We'll ask Brandon.
Oh, I'm sure this guy's got an explanation.
Good evening. We wanted to get more units built, so we were able to build the southern 3 buildings, and we're able to get, I think it's 100, don't quote me on it, but it's like 120 or 130 units. It ends up being about 20 more units with that phase than the original first phase. So we wanted to get more units in so we could get more people housed, more revenue, so we
Okay.
could build the next phase.
I get that, but without the other improvements, it makes it hard to get in and out of there, even if people are living there while you're doing all this other construction. It's not as connected. I understand. I mean, we can't go backwards at this point, but it just always gives me heartburn when these kind of things come up. When we were promised one thing and then it goes a different direction, and then we have to postpone these benefits that the city's supposed to get until the very end of the project, because it sounds like those things aren't going to happen until the end now.
Yeah, we're hoping to get started on the second phase this time next year, so we're looking at about 1 year skip on that.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Any further questions on this matter? I would entertain a motion. Rebecca?
I move to approve Resolution 26-11, which amends the annexation and development agreement between POTS and Pippi Trust, Alpine 9340 Investors LLC, and the City of Whitefish.
Second? Seconded by Councilor Cornell. Any further discussions? All those in favor? Matter passes unanimously, and on we go. Get her done. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Now we're on to communications from city councilors and the mayor. Giuseppe, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm pleased that we got to this point with Vision 2045. Probably I won't be around to see the results, but I wish the new generations to do better and better.
Steve.
Thanks. I have a couple quick questions, just things that have arisen over more than once. What's going on at the Baptist Church? Can you give us an update on that, or next to the Baptist Church, Dave? There's a development project going on?
That's a commercially zoned lot. Apartments are used by right under state law, so yeah, they just needed a building permit to build there.
Okay, so they're putting apartments in there? Okay, thanks. I've had more than one person ask me about that. And then this might be for, it's either for Greg. maybe for Greg. I noticed a lot of horse manure on the sidewalk on Caro the other day. And it's been there for a little over a week now, so it's kind of dried up. Is there a rule about using our paths with horses, our shared use paths with horses?
Did you say horse manure?
Yes.
Man, I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
Because we have to pick up dog poop.
We can clean it up, but I have not. I drive Caro a couple times a day, and I haven't seen any horses out there. But
I didn't see the horse, but I know it was there.
You sure?
We have enforced the cleanup of livestock poo in the past, mainly when they tether them to the downtown area and the alleys and those type of things. We've contacted. We haven't received any complaints that I'm aware of reference
Okay.
it. But
Well,
if
mark
we see
this
it
as your
happen,
first
we would
complaint,
definitely
I
jump
guess, on
it, but-
Caro.
Okay. By your house, right there at like
It's
Third and
just
Caro?
south, just north of my house in the
Okay.
next block.
All right.
I mean, I almost rode over it with my bike, and I've done that before, and it's really not a fun.
We'll get that cleaned up.
Not a fun thing when it gets all over your bike and your legs and stuff, so.
It wasn't my daughter, I can tell you that much.
Okay. The other thing I have to say is for Wendy, she's not here, but maybe, I'm sure she'll be listening. I've had the opportunity to work with Wendy for a number of years, and I've also gotten to know her outside of the professional relationship with the in the pool relationship with swimming with her children and my children swimming together for a number of years, and she and her husband are both just really top quality people, and I'm really sad to see her go, and also very excited for her in her new realm, and I'm wondering if maybe there's a grandbaby coming, and that's why she's getting out now, but haven't really talked to her about it, so we'll just start a rumor, or at least put some pressure on her daughter. And then the last thing, again, I do want to thank everybody that's been involved in the Whitefish 2045 process. Alan, thank you for sticking with us. He's not here either, so he got out of here as quickly as he could. I didn't see any tears of joy from him yet, but I assume there will be some. But to the Planning Commission, to everybody on here who filled in at one time or another, and to all of you for kind of keeping it going and keeping the momentum going and really focusing in on the things that are really important to this town, because that's the vision of what comes for the next 20 years is really important. And if we look back to 2007, the first growth policy that we passed, or the first modern, I guess, growth policy that we passed, we've come a long way, baby, and we've done a lot of really good things for this town and this community. And I hope that this policy, I'm sure this policy will continue in that way, and 20 years from now we'll be looking back and saying, wow, we really did a good job.
And for the record, Steve, it wasn't my horse either. Rebecca.
Yep, I just wanted to follow up with the staff about the Armory neighbors' questions. And just, did you want to respond to them, since so many of them came tonight, and they have, I guess they don't want to give up their green space, but they do want help with the bridge and maintenance, and they're worried about erosion. That about it? Okay, I just wondered if you wanted to address any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's something we're going to finalize here tonight, but I can tell you we've been working with those property owners since 2024 on the Armory Road project. We have the stormwater easement in place. There's already a 10-inch pipe that comes down in between those two lots. And we started working with the property owners to improve it as part of the Armory Road project, and then all of a sudden, as part of that, they wanted us to improve their bridge. So we've been working with them on their bridge, for 2 years now, I think, about 2 years that bridge has been failing. We're not intentionally sending more pedestrians that direction. We're just improving the pedestrian corridor that they are required to maintain as part of their subdivision, the Willowbrook subdivision that was approved back in the 80s. So we have a final public meeting tomorrow night, and so I intend to have additional conversations with them, but I don't think it's the council's or the city's obligation to improve that bridge. I think it was part of their original subdivision conditions, and what we're looking for from them is just an easement to improve the stormwater condition that currently exists.
Is there any way to see if the other subdivision is diverting water onto their property? Because that was news to me that they felt like that had increased the flow through
No,
their,
it
to their
didn't
property.
increase the flow. The Mountain Brook project does have an overflow that comes in that direction, but it didn't increase the flow in any way.
Yeah. All right, sounds like it's a long story, but you're making progress, so thank you. Yeah, I just really excited that the growth policy, which is now the community plan, is done. I remember putting that on our council goals in 2020 after hearing about it for so long on the planning board, and so I knew it was going to be really hard to get it done, and I'm sorry that the planning commission had to work so hard on it, but I think it's really a great document, and I appreciate the staff time just really pushing to get it done in time for us to be compliant with the law. And that's all. Thank you.
Andy.
I too am sad to see Wendy go, and I'm happy for her at the same time. I think the care and contribution she's made to this community over the years, while maybe not noticed by a lot of people, certainly are noticed by our staff and certainly noticed by all of us that have sat up here for the 20 years tenure that she spent with us, and she will be missed. She's not going to be gone. That's great. So we will still get to see her around, and I know she's having a retirement party, so I encourage everyone to be there. Check your email because the date is in there in the location also. But even more importantly to that, I really think that we would be remiss in our duties if we did not congratulate Ben and Brooks on the arrival of Emerson Marigold, their new daughter. So one of the reasons Ben is not here tonight is because they have not slept more than 2 hours since that arrival. So anyway, it was a little fried, but they're doing well, and I really want to congratulate them, and I know they're super excited, and it's a really awesome thing. So it's good to welcome a new life into this community.
I have very little this evening. I'm going to say that I too am way, way, way proud of the work that we've done on the growth policy, and that it is finally in a finalized form and done. And for Wendy, this is not a slight on anyone else in that planning department. If I ever had a question, I always thought of her first. I always knew that she would have the answer. And that she would be available. And again, everybody's busy, but I don't know why that's the default I had. And I will miss her terribly. I will miss her shining face here at the podium because her staff reports were second to none. And so I wish her all the well, and I congratulate her on the opportunity that's going to open up for her now. So I think that's great. And that's about all I've got for this evening. So thank all. We're done.